I'm sat today in the rather smart Regent's Park College in Oxford with Constantine Sandis, who's Professor of Philosophy at the University of Hertfordshire. And I've got in my hands a copy of your book, Constantine. It's just come out in paperback as well, although this is
solid,
rather more substantial. And it's called The Things We Do and Why We Do Them. That sounds like a very big, broad topic that'll basically get the answer to almost everything. So I presume, being a philosophical work, it's got a more precise focus. So what's it about?
Yes, it doesn't tell you why we do anything, which is maybe so. The first line in the book is "Reader beware."
Yeah.
In the hope that someone's already maybe bought it before they get to that line. But no, it's really about theories of the things we do and why we do them, and in particular, it's about different theories trying to explain action, often reductivist theories that say it's all about sex, or it's all about money, or it's all about desires. So some of these theories coming from psychology, but also far more intricate debates in philosophy about whether we're motivated by beliefs or desires or facts or combinations of these things, and so on. So it's trying to both tackle a rather technical question within moral psychology and a more general question in motivational psychology.
Yeah, because when you start to speak on that, immediately makes me think of kind of a psychology of motivation.
Yes, so it's definitely between philosophy and psychology, but in both cases it's sort of meta-philosophy and meta-psychology. So it's looking at competing theories of why we act, in particular theories of what our reasons for action are, their ontology and how they explain causally, non-causally, and so on. And it's really trying to say that the debates arise not quite because people are talking past each other, but nonetheless that they conflate different conceptions of action and reasons, and in so doing, each one is wanting too much from a reason. So each side is right about something. Reasons need to have this, and wrong about something else.
Do you think that's part of a desire to have a kind of simple or an explanation that is kind of holistic? So around, say, sex, you started. The first one you mentioned, the idea that everything we do is at ultimate level driven by that. It's a very popular conception. So the idea that if you could just find a key that would explain human behaviour is very kind of seductive.
That's right, from the will to power in Nietzsche to whatever in Freud and indeed in Schopenhauer as well. And we sometimes associate this with large psychological views and maybe more continental philosophy. And analytic philosophy is always looking at far smaller details, but I think a grain of that remains in there. So people are under the grip of a theory and want to say all reasons are mental states, all reasons are facts, all reasons are desires. So you still get that drive. And I don't say this in the book, but the way I see it is these are what's going on is there's something I call the shampoo theory of reasons. So some shampoos are 2-in-1, shampoo and conditioner, 3-in-1 with a body wash. And this is where you have one thing trying to perform several functions. And the more you add, the worse it does each one. And so if people share this kind of notion of a reason, then you want a reason to both explain action, rationalize it, cause it, and then you end up with conflicting views because no single concept of a reason could give you all these things.
And that makes me think of, I'm not sure it should, but that kind of area that's so popular now in terms of the big debate about theism, atheism, all that, about people's belief. Yeah. So presumably one of the things that concerns you is this conflation of beliefs and reasons that people have, where people say, I have these beliefs, and they kind of almost stand instead of reasons or fulfill, as it were, the same function for people.
Yes, that's right. And part of the problem is, so there's belief in the sense of religious belief or faith, and belief in the more philosophy of mind sense of whatever you think beliefs are, mental attitudes or states. But even there, belief is ambiguous between what you believe and you're believing it. Just like desire, so you may think, I don't desire my own desire, I don't believe my own beliefs.
But of course, we do have desires about our desires. I desire not to want to
That's
smoke.
right.
Or desire not to want
so a reason might be a belief in the sense of I go to the psychiatrist because I have this belief I'm trying to get rid
Yeah.
of. But that's
Yeah.
not the normal
No.
way of explaining things. But actually related to this, part of the reason why the title is as it is just like there's a distinction between what we believe and our believing it, I think there's a distinction between what we do and our doing it. So people who talk of actions as events, say things like, why did my action occur?
Yeah.
But I think the question, why did I do this, is very different from why did the event of my doing it occur, which may not ask for the light in which I saw things, but just gives some kind of causal explanation. So I was very keen that it's the things we do, and why we do them. And in the book, I begin with 20 conflations people make between different senses of reason and different senses of action. And as you add them up, the mess becomes bigger and bigger. And so the book doesn't offer a theory of why we, of all our behavior, of why we act. It tells you why all theories are bound to fail. So it's a kind of anti-theoretical.
Which is good, I think it's good. But also I think it sounds like one of the approaches you have is that people are hugely curious about why they do things, because it's about them and people like themselves. But it also, if there are so many conflated theories on offer, that it's easy to, presumably, to pick and mix the ones that flatter your sense of who you are. I did this because. And so there's all these suite of things you could pick at. And there's no rationale for why you would explain your behaviour one way, and yet your rival or your friend or your enemy's behaviour with a different motivation because you don't like their behaviour.
That's right. I rather like this bit early on in Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil, where he talks about how, when we mess up, we're all too keen to say our actions are determined and caused by external factors. But when we get something right, you kind of think, I'm the man, I'm the praise, and it's kind of, look what I did. And suddenly we're sort of libertarian individualists who think we're self-made people and so on. But you mess up, and suddenly there are all these mitigating...
The pressures I was under, it was difficult to make a decision in that place.
And that, and it wasn't my fault, and so on. So there is this kind of, you might sort of switch from one kind of account of explanation to another, depending on whether you're proud or ashamed of what you did.
Context and who's doing it, and
whether it's you or someone else. Like you said, it's always from the agent's point of view. It's easier to see the sort of facts, or maybe things you thought were facts that you considered, weighed, and acted upon. Whereas from the outside, we're more likely to call them beliefs. Right, because I may think you've got all these deluded beliefs, and that's why
they drive me into my kind of behaviour.
That's right, and in fact, in the religious case is very interesting from this point of view. If you're talking about someone did something because of religious conviction,
well, that's very timely, because at the moment when somebody carries out an atrocity of some sort, and they happen to be religious, or maybe more than happen, the question of how much that was a motivation, how much it was a result, really becomes not just the kind of philosophical thing for people in armchairs to philosophise about, but a big issue in the news and the comment section about how much the religious beliefs were motivation, and if that matters or not.
That's right. Actually, it feels like a long time ago now, but the seeds of this book were actually not far after 9/11. I was working in philosophy of action anyway, but I was seeing these explanations of why the hijackers did what they did, why the terrorists did what they did, and I could see that they were conflating different kinds of explanation. So one would be in terms of, think of the kind of explanation where you appeal to your upbringing, your education, so you appeal to kind of underlying, is that kind of nesting factors,
kind of character formation,
and others would appeal to sort of the situation, social political situation.
Driven to this by extreme.
Or they'd entered some extremist group, or it's America's fault because they did that. So that's there's a chapter on real reasons, and people would offer these things as, which of all these is the real reason? Is it the character trait? Is it America's foreign policy or lack thereof? Is it religion? Is it Islam? Is it? And I was kind of interested in saying, look, these theories are not in competition with each other. And what I hope to do by the end of this book is show how might we paint a picture that brings in the considerations the agent acted upon, the things that made these look like good reasons for acting, which is a kind of something that explains why they took something else to be a reason, structuring causes, triggering causes, and sort of not think of all these things as necessarily in competition.
So by the end of the book, what we don't end up with is a nice simple postcard solution to why we do what we do, but we end up with a picture where things are much murkier and more complicated than anyone starting the book would imagine.
That's right, and it's not all destructive. So when you kind of dissolve rather than solve a problem, part of what's meant to happen is that we lose the desire to want to provide these kinds of explanation, these all-encompassing, and this is meant to be liberating. But the fact that there are these different senses of reason and action doesn't mean that anything goes. So the last chapter does say some things about constraints. So if you say something about someone's motive or intention, it does constrain the other kinds of reason you can mention. It's not like you can combine anything with anything. And so I'm interested in these kind of constraints. So it ends with a kind of sketch for how we might go about, and in particular relating sort of empirical discoveries to the more conceptual work that's done here. So when a neuroscientist comes and says, all your reasons for action are not what you think they are.
They do that a lot.
They do that a lot, and it's very frustrating. And I was looking at literature, this is something I've been working on since then, on confabulations. The reason you bought these stockings rather than those was that they were on the right-hand side, not that they were smoother. And I kind of think, actually, no, it's the fact that they were on the right-hand side explains why I thought they were smoother, and then that's why I bought them. So it's those kind of distinctions I'm interested in. If that, I don't know if that
absolutely. And I think as kind of that gives much more sense why this is not merely or only a psychological work, but kind of hopefully has a kind of philosophical bent as well. Thank you.
Thanks very much.